Welcome back to the Horseman's Corner. I'm Howard Hale, host of the program. Let's get right into the second half of today's show. Our guest on the Horseman's Corner today, Val Baker. She's a Minatare, Nebraska horsewoman, but as I understand it, you just recently came back from the Paint World Show. Is that correct?
Yes, I just came back from the American Paint Horse Association World Show, and the roping was all held on the 27th, so we drove down there and competed in that with 2 horses. I had a friend named Becky go with me just for help.
How'd you do? How'd it turn out for you?
It turned out pretty good. I took Capital Business and H.H. Diamond Rio, and we were World and Reserve in the goat tie-in. Placed in the breakaway. Rio was reserve in the heading. She won the heeling, and she was reserve in the steer stopping. So she did really good, and it's about time because I've been showing her for a while, and finally got the judges to like her.
How was the World Paint Show? Pretty good size show?
It's a pretty good size show. They've had some numbers going down here lately. I think maybe just too much going on for a lot of people, but a lot of numbers were up in a lot of the ranch classes. They had a whole new category for the ranch riding, ranch trail, ranch cow work, and there were a lot of people in those. The novice amateur ranch trail that we sat and watched had 32 novice amateurs in it, and you have to qualify to come to those. So that's a very good interest item for people with horses.
How big were the rope horse classes?
The largest class, I think, was the heeling. We had 11.
And is that something you have to qualify for?
You have to qualify to go to the World by showing at 2 local shows under 4 judges. The other classes, like reining, you have to show under 8 judges, I do believe.
You've been at the World Show several times, haven't you?
I have been every year since 1996 that I have not been deployed.
You've had pretty good success over the years, I take it.
I've been lucky. There's a saying down in Texas that says even a blind pig finds an acorn now and then, so I found a few acorns.
Gosh, how many times have you placed well in the roping and the paint show?
My one horse, Capital Business, we have 19 world titles on him, and I think 25 total because there's some reserves in there to add in. He's done very well. Taking a Chance has done well. He was my first big world title back in 2000 in the heeling. I also showed Quincy's Honor Code and then Retro Pep. And Retro Pep and I won a power performance in 16, and then Capital Business and I won a power performance in 17.
Do you compete in team ropings outside of the paint world?
Yes, I do. I go around to local team ropings. Last year I went down to Fort Worth again and went to the Patriot and competed in the veterans roping. It's kind of like a pro-am, but the amateur has to be a veteran of one of the services. And I had a lot of fun at that and did very well. And they're planning on having it again this year, so I might try and get down there. It's held in March right before the American.
This team roping is a big event, but what about the breakaway roping? Is that something that's becoming more popular across the country?
Breakaway has had a swell in interest and also driven by a lot more places opening up for breakaway. The gals up in the wilderness circuit got the PRCA rodeos up there to start having it. It used to be that you compete in breakaway through college, and that was kind of the end of it unless you did WPRA, and it was pretty small. And I actually got to compete in Cheyenne this year in the breakaway. First time ever Cheyenne held breakaway for women, and it was the largest event that they had this year as far as entries for their different rodeo classes. We did really good. I had a lot of fun, and the gal who won it is a college rodeo coach, and so getting the word out is great. I hope that Cheyenne has it again this coming year. And there's been a lot of places where you see the breakaway jackpot purses going up. And I believe this year the gals at the American will be roping for $1 million in the breakaway. Last year it was $100,000, which is an unheard of purse for a breakaway for a 2.5-second run.
Well, yeah, that's a... Gosh, are you going to go win yourself $1 million, Val?
I don't know that I'm postured as one of those people. I can sure try. We'll see if I can get qualified. I'm going to try and go to one of the qualifiers and see here in the next couple months.
Val, you've had a lot of success in roping events over the years. What's it take to make a good rope horse, in your view?
In my view, well, the first thing you start with is a really well-broke horse, and then from there you start patterning them, practicing on them, getting them behind the cattle, getting them used to the rope, and once they learn that, they learn how to rate the cattle. That's a huge thing. Running up to the steer and slowing down on their own to match the speed of the steer or the calf so you have a chance to rope it. And then, of course, getting them used to the box and coming out of there with a big burst of speed, barriers. There's a lot involved in making a good roping horse, and you usually don't find a really solid roping horse that's super young. They usually have a little bit of time on them. They've been hauled to some different places, crowds, speaker systems, fireworks, all kinds of stuff that you have to get them used to.
Okay, how do you keep that horse quiet in the box? Because that could, if you don't get out of that box in good shape, or if you have trouble in there, you're off to a bad start. So you have to keep them quiet in there, do you not?
The start is everything, and that just, as far as what I know from working with these horses, it's just a lot of time working with them. Scoring a lot of calves. Scoring is when you let the calf out without chasing it, letting that horse know that he can relax in there. I always end my roping practice by loosening the cinch in the box, letting them know that's where they finish. It's just time. It's a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to keep a good horse good. You can have a good horse and make it go bad really fast without spending the time on them.
These good rope horses are a little older. What were the ages of the horses that you took down at the paint show?
H.H. Diamond Rio is 12 this year, and Capital Business is 24.
So that's something that people don't really understand sometimes, is those horses are still, if they've been handled right, a lot of times they're still good well into their 20s, aren't they?
Well into their 20s, and with today's modern, vaccinations, internal medicine, dental, and hoof care, horses are living longer. Plus, we're not using them like we used to, so they are basically a pleasure and hobby animal. We're lucky in this valley. We have a lot of working cowboys that are still using their horses to make a living, but for the most part, most of the horses are not used like they were even 50 years ago, let alone 100 years ago. So they are living longer.
Val, let's talk about another thing that you do. I know you work with the 4-H kids. How's that going?
Really well. We had a really good county fair this year, and some plunky little contestants that battled out the different classes. The Saddle Club also held a couple horse shows, so they got some good practice this year. Last year we were plagued by rain, but the kids, I love working with the kids and teaching them about horsemanship and how to ask a horse to do something and learn how to communicate with them, and watching them grow. It's pretty rewarding.
Well, you talk about communicating with that horse. That's one of the things the kids do have to learn, isn't it? That's a living, breathing animal, not just like getting on a four-wheeler.
It's not like getting on a four-wheeler. It has a mind of its own, and sometimes sometimes horses like to play jokes or press your buttons just as much as your friends do sometimes. So you have to learn patience, and it's a great way for children to learn and grow up and learn how to actually become very responsible adults. Horses are a good learning tool and a good investment by parents for kids growing up.
Have you seen quite a bit of, did you see quite a bit of progress with your kids over the last couple of years that you've worked with them?
We did. We actually, I was so happy. We had a 4-H meeting where all the little kids that were there got all their leads the first try, and I was a very happy leader on that day.
Yeah, because that's a big accomplishment.
It is for them. They have to recognize it and cue the horse correctly, and so I was tickled pink that day. I remember it.
Now, you've been involved with horses in a lot of different parts of the world, haven't you?
I have been blessed. I've had a 25-year military career where I had my horses with me the entire time. I had friends watch them when I was deployed. And one of the things I found out on my very first deployment is that speaking horse is a universal language, and everybody around the world has love and respect for their horses. I found people in Bosnia, that was my first deployment, Bosnia-Herzegovina, they had a horse that they prized and kept. We got to talk about horses. In Turkey and Hungary has herds of horses that the government pays to keep separate and specialized, and they have guardians over the herds. They're very, very proud of their heritage with the Hungarian cavalry. And then, of course, in Iraq and Afghanistan, they have great reverence for horses. I was in the Philippines, and, of course, with the British influence and then the Spanish influence on the Philippines, there's quite a influence of polo around there. And so I got to hang out with some of the polo players and go lope around the polo field one day. But and then, of course, in Germany and Italy, there's horses all over. They ride a little different than we do. They like to jump over things, but it was pretty fun learning and meeting a lot more people than I would have had I stayed with the military and not ventured out with the horses.
Time for our last break of the day. Let's take that. You folks stay tuned. We'll be back with more from Val Baker in just a moment. You're listening to the Horseman's Corner. There's only one reason to have a website or a Facebook page for your business, and that's to let people know you are in business and to bring people to your business, make them familiar with it on a basis that makes them want to work with you and do business with you. If that website or Facebook page doesn't get found, doesn't do you a darn bit of good. AgSearch.us is our newest search engine for agriculture that will make that agricultural website or Facebook page a lot easier to find. Bring more people to your doorstep with the idea that they may be willing to do business with you. That's agsearch.us. That's our newest website, and it's advertised on radio stations from Texas to Montana. agsearch.us. That's easy to remember, agsearch.us. So it'll be easy to find. agsearch.us. Visit today. Welcome back to the Horseman's Corner. We're on the last segment of today's show. Let's continue with Valerie Baker. Well, let's start with Bosnia. Is that a breed of horses that they have there that's specific to that area?
That one, the lady didn't know the horse's bloodline, but it sure looked to have a lot of thoroughbred in it. They actually, the way I met them, we were out doing a patrol, and there was a little boy, and the mom had tied the lead rope around the boy's wrist so that the horse could not accidentally graze into the minefields. That's one of the things we don't get to encounter here in the United States. But there were 77,000 landmines placed in Bosnia, and of course, not letting that horse get into them was one of their priority things. And it had been well trained, and so the mom was very keen on keeping it safe. So, but I don't really know for sure what breed it was. She didn't have the language, and I didn't have her language skills. I couldn't even pretend to talk to her very well to get across what breed it was. But
what about
it was a beautiful animal?
What about, was it Hungary that you mentioned that have the herds of horses that it's kind of a national treasure?
There's two different and separate herds that they keep, and I would be remiss in trying to remember them right now, but the government actually sponsors and keeps them a pure line of them. And so the story goes, one of those lines of horses has verbal records for almost 4,000 years.
Oh wow, that goes back a long ways. What any differences in the conformation of those particular horses? What size were they? What sets them apart?
The one herd that I really got to go up close to and look at, they were very slender, very long-necked, long legs, long pasterns. They looked like they could run pretty good, but just they were streamlined, if I would put a word to it. and very narrow. But according to my Hungarian guide who was in the cavalry, he said those horses could travel a long way with a